For all short ball techniques, the flick motion must be forward first, then upward, or sometimes just forward. With a vertical forearm, you can only go up, not forward. This is a major reason why you lack confidence in your flick. Alright everyone, today we're going to talk about the flick. First, I'll teach you how to return an opponent's topspin serve with your backhand. There are two main ways to handle this kind of ball. The first is to flick it, and the second is to use a banana flick. You'll most often use these techniques against half-long or short balls. So, the short hook serves, backhand sidespin topspin serves, and no-spin serves you see in matches are all variations of sidespin topspin. If you just push these balls, you won't generate much spin, so the best option is to flick. First scenario, if the ball is half spin or no spin, you need to open your racket face slightly. Remember, for in-table shots, get your body in and keep your hand in front. When you want to execute a high-quality, powerful flick, you need to create some space between your racket and the ball. If your goal is just to get the ball over the net safely, you should get closer to the ball. The closer you are, the more stable your flick will be. That's a little secret for you. Second point, a standard forehand or backhand flick requires wrist action. Only the push flick technique is done without using the wrist. There is no push flick on the backhand side. Professional players primarily use the banana flick, so for backhand, you have the standard flick and the banana flick. On the forehand side, you have the standard flick, the push flick, and the push lift. So, the backhand flick absolutely requires wrist movement. Make sure your elbow and shoulder are down and relaxed. From this position, your wrist should start in a neutral, flat position. During the flick, your thumb provides the force. This applies to both penhold and shakehand grips. The wrist moves from back to front and slightly upward. There are 3 key points here. First, the main power comes from your wrist. Second, if you want to generate speed on your backhand flick, you must use your thumb for pressure. The third key point is to never flick straight up. Any forceful upward motion will send the ball long. So, you must initiate the stroke with forward motion first. Racket face angled, go forward, and then upward. Never go directly upward. The same principle applies to the shakehand grip. So, what makes the backhand flick a threat? The flick I'm demonstrating now has no brushing friction. Against sidespin topspin, you don't need to create friction. My wrist is generating power with a forward and back motion, there's no brushing. The motion is mainly from back to front, impacting the ball and then moving upward. A flick with friction is used for backspin balls. The same is true for the forehand flick. Why does your flick lack quality? Because you're always trying to brush the ball. Think about returning a topspin ball, you can just close your racket angle and block it. No friction is needed for topspin. The banana flick, however, requires friction. The standard backhand flick is about forward impact. Let me show you one with brushing friction. There, that was a flick with friction. But when I flick forward like I did before, notice how quickly the ball leaves the racket. That's a shot without friction. The wrist moves from back to front to hit through the ball, not to graze it. When you do a banana flick, you can brush the ball. The flick is a technique that primarily relies on speed, supplemented by placement. So when should you add friction? When you get a semi-spin ball that you could either push or flick, and you decide to flick, you can add a bit of brushing friction. Normally, against any sidespin topspin, you should focus on forward power, using speed and placement to create pressure, not friction. The force is directed primarily forward. For the power source, remember that in a backhand flick, your thumb must be driving forward. Look at my rubber here, this spot is completely worn down from my thumb. In the entire backhand system, flick, banana flick, block, loop, or defense, your thumb must apply pressure to generate power. So if you want to flick with speed, focus on driving forward with your thumb. It's a quick snap. Hit the ball with forward thumb pressure while creating distance with your wrist's back and forth motion. To ensure the ball goes over, get close to it. For instance, if the ball is here, I contact it closely to lift it over the net. To generate quality, create space between you and the ball. Leave a little room to accelerate into the shot. When your thumb presses forward, you get speed. Don't rely on your forearm and upper arm for power. Next, let's discuss the short forehand ball. When your opponent serves short to your forehand, pushing often leads to errors. You must learn to flick it. The forehand flick has several variations. The first is the standard flick, like I'm doing now. The second is the rolling flick. The third is the push flick. I'm not using my wrist here, this is a push flick. The fourth is the deceptive flick. The most consistent flick is the push flick. The most powerful flick is the standard aggressive flick. Short forehand serves are rarely very spinny. If your opponent tries to add a lot of spin, the ball will likely be half long. It's hard to serve very short and very spinny, especially for amateurs. First key point, for the standard flick, why do so many amateur players struggle with it? It's because your forearm is positioned vertically like this, even when you do a forehand drive. Look, this posture makes it impossible to generate forward force. The motion is all upward. So when you flick, your elbow should actually have a feeling of pushing forward. Keep your shoulder and elbow down, and push the elbow forward. The elbow shouldn't be raised, creating a gap between it and the table. Your elbow tip should point down, with a forward pushing sensation. This is the foundation for a good push, flick, and deceptive shots. That's the first point. Second, for all in-table techniques, the fundamental requirement is that your forearm is parallel to the table. Let me imitate a typical amateur player. Your arm is like this, right? For both pushing and flicking. When you bring your elbow down and push it forward, your forearm naturally becomes level. For all short ball techniques, the flick motion must be forward first, then upward, or sometimes just forward. With a vertical forearm, you can only go up, not forward. This is a major reason why you lack confidence in your flick. The fundamental mechanics are already causing errors. Third, when moving in for a short forehand ball, it's crucial that you don't step straight in. If you do, you'll only be able to flick cross-court. You must step in sideways. See how my body is turned to the side, not facing forward. From this position, I can execute forehand side pushes or push flicks without feeling cramped. If I step in straight, my shoulder and elbow get jammed, and I'll naturally take a shortcut with my technique. Your hand ends up in this position, so you can only return the ball to your opponent's forehand, which means they don't even have to move their feet. Step in diagonally, and your shoulder and elbow open up naturally, aiming towards this angle. Now, watching my opponent, I can start from this angle and flick here, or I can flick over there. It's very deceptive. If you step straight in, you're locked into one direction. Trying to go wide will get you jammed. The basic setup is, get in, turn your body sideways, and aim your racket down the line. If the opponent stays in their backhand corner, I can change my shot at the last second to flick cross-court. If they're already in the middle, I immediately change my shot to push or flick down the line. This allows me to play based on my opponent's position. Open your body, and aim your racket down the line. This is your foundation. Against backspin, just use a long push or a standard push. The hardest part is reading the spin. For backspin, you should use its own spin to send it back with control, like a short push, long push, or side push. Don't take the risk of flicking heavy backspin. Even if you manage to flick it, it will be a slow, high-arcing ball with no pace or spin. You're just converting backspin to topspin. Third point, pay close attention to your racket angle when you flick. When a sidespin topspin ball hits your racket, its natural trajectory is up and away, so you must close your racket face to control it. Now, here's a common problem. Many players say that when they close their racket face, the ball goes into the net. Why does it go into the net? Because the serve wasn't pure topspin. It was a semi-topspin or no-spin ball. So, how do we handle these tricky serves? You need to open your racket face more and drive forward or upward. If it's a true side spin topspin, you should contact the top middle part of the ball and flick forward. Generally, against the serves from amateur players, start with a standard forehand drive racket angle. From my experience, it's rare for them to generate heavy side spin topspin with a left side spin serve. Heavy spin usually comes from hook serves or backhand serves. So, when dealing with a left side spin serve, you should generally open your racket face, drive forward, and then lift upward. However, if it's a backhand serve or a hook serve, I recommend closing your racket angle a bit and flicking through it. So where does the power for the flick come from? For the backhand flick, it's the thumb. For the forehand flick, it's the index finger. First, your index finger must apply pressure. Second, your wrist must generate power. Watch my wrist as I do a slow motion flick. See how my wrist is engaged? Look closely, the power is coming from the wrist. So when we flick, using the wrist is how you generate a powerful, explosive shot. This is what you call a power flick. Use your wrist, and drive forward with your index finger. So the first power point is your index finger. For penhold, it's the 3 fingers on the back. The second power point is the wrist. Snapping it like you're slapping someone. Using your wrist to drive the racket forward into the ball is the key to a quality flick. If you use your whole arm, the ball will go long. Next, let's cover the push flick, which is the most stable variation. The push flick is very different from the standard flick we just discussed. First, the closer you are to the ball, the easier it is. The power comes late in the stroke. Second, the push flick isn't powered by the wrist, it's powered by the forearm. This means the angle of your racket face should remain fixed from your starting position all the way through contact. Think of it like a forehand drive. The racket shape doesn't change. There's no wrist snap or arm wraparound. So, once you set your initial racket angle, you simply use your forearm, upper arm, and shoulder to push forward. Open the racket face and guide the ball forward. That's the push flick. I'll demonstrate. Notice my wrist doesn't move, it's all forearm. What are the benefits of the push flick? First, it's very consistent because you're close to the ball. My racket face is stable. With a standard flick, your wrist is active. So if you misread the spin, use the wrong racket angle, or time it slightly off, you'll make an error and hit the ball long. You see, even against a backspin ball that you could push, you can still use a push flick. I just have to open my racket face more. I started with a closed angle, but now I open it up for backspin. For a ball you can push, you can also do this. Technically, this is called a push lift. The benefit is that it's easy. Why do so many people like to push? Because it's stable. A full stroke with a backswing and follow-through introduces many variables: elbow, arm, wrist, contact point, that can go wrong. But a simple forward push is much less prone to error, though it lacks power. So, players, if your opponent often serves short to your forehand, and you miss your flicks or get attacked when you push, I strongly recommend using this to vary your rhythm and tactics. The first key is to get close to the ball. For a push flick against topspin, keep the racket face closed. Maintain that angle and push forward with your forearm. For a push lift against backspin, open your racket face like you would for a push, and guide it forward with your forearm. It's that simple. Someone asked if you can flick the ball on the descent. Yes, you can. Look, this is a slow ball. I can let it drop and still flick it. This shot isn't about power. The most important thing is to change the rhythm of the rally. Because if you always push, you'll get attacked, and if you always flick aggressively, you might make errors. So, you can use these variations in a match to mix up your serve-receive. Otherwise, your returns become too predictable, and your opponent can easily attack you.